Okay, we are good to go.
All right, awesome. Hello, so my name is Liam. I'm an employee at the Makerspace. I'll be leading this workshop for the most part, but I'm joined here by, to my right is Evan and Gage. If you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Hello, I'm Evan. I like programming,
Yeah.
and I'm bald. I don't know.
You're joined today by a bald programmer. It's
Yes.
it's a rare species.
A literal and a metaphorical egghead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Engage.
I'm a current student at BC, and I happen to also work at the Makerspace.
Yeah, I forget too. I mean,
I was gonna say Maker Shop, but that wasn't right.
yeah, we work at the Illicit Design and Manufacturing Center at the Bellevue College building, where we 3D print things such as horses with a human hand for a head and other cool projects for people who are perhaps more normal and well adjusted. All right,
Club
so
HQ.
So anyway, moving forward. So this is a game server workshop. The basic premise of today is we're just going to go through a bit of what it's like to actually manually deploy a server in the cloud for you to host games with friends and to use for really anything that you want. It can be Minecraft. It can be an old RTS game that you like to play. It could be anything that requires a server-based connection that also provides like a server application that you can run. The tools we're going to be using are going to be DigitalOcean account, which is it's much like Amazon's AWS. We may get into that later if we have time. But it basically allows us to put up an instance out in the cloud with their service. And we're going to be using Ubuntu server. And we're going to just be using the 20.04 long-term service version of it. So pretty standard. And most of the commands we're running can work on versions earlier than 20. As you get earlier, you might need to look up specifics, but most of these things are pretty standard and have been for a while. So, and then once we do that, we'll just use Minecraft. We're going to be using Java just because that was the one that we had instead of the Bedrock version. Yeah, we'll maybe show you how it works and get to show a little bit of how well a low-end server kind of works, because you may want to weigh your options later on in choosing between AWS and DigitalOcean if you want performance or if it's okay for you to have a low price range, or you can kind of decide from a personal experience there. All right.
So this covering of a game server on a remote instance isn't only just applicable towards making a game server. This knowledge will let you make any type of server. You could do web hosting. You could host a database on here. It teaches you the commands that you need to know in almost every instance when it comes to making something on a remote instance.
Yes, and that is a good point. Yeah, it's a lot of the same until you get down to up to the point where you're like, oh, what do I actually want to put on this server? In our case, it's a game server. Like he said, it could be a database. It could just be a remote version of an, what was it? I use it sometimes to do instances of different Linux servers that I want to use and test around and play around with remotely. So that's fun. So there's lots of stuff you can do with it more than just game. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, which is always dangerous. Go ahead and get that set up. All right. There's so many things in the way. That's why you need multiple monitors, so you don't have to keep tabbing between things. All right. There we go, share screen. The whole one.
I don't think you'll have to request permission, but
permission for what?
I was just saying, given that you're co-host, I shouldn't have to share.
No, okay, so can everyone see my screen just fine?
Yep.
Awesome. All right, so DigitalOcean. All right. So I already have an account, and we're going to be using the one that we made. It's pretty easy. You just put your information in there and sign up. They'll guide you through. It's much like any other service you'd sign up for on the internet.
And if you're a student and you want, DigitalOcean offers a $50 credit to students.
Oh, really? That's cool.
You can just type in DigitalOcean space education, and it'll take you to GitHub, which is a repository where people share their programs and whatnot. And from there, you can sign up and get that free credit.
It is cool. I think I took advantage of that when I signed up. I'd forgotten about that. I mean, look at the DigitalOcean, you know. There we go. Sometimes it takes a second. Awesome. All right. So we have our dashboard here. Something I personally like about DigitalOcean is you can kind of have not only multiple instances in your account, you can also set up this little projects thing here so you can separate them out. Because I'm just using it for personal / makerspace things today, we're just going to go ahead and use one project. I'm deleting this because this is the one we were working on last time. And so we're going to go ahead and make a new one. So this is what you'll usually see when you're greeted after you make your account. So we just go ahead and get started by making what they call a droplet. Do you remember what they call it in AWS, Evan or Gage?
So in AWS, AWS's service is called EC2, so Elastic Compute 2. It's basically the same thing. DigitalOcean calls virtual machines droplets.
Yeah.
Amazon just calls them instances.
Yeah, so a droplet's not a universal name or anything. It's just the kind of fun, cutesy name that DigitalOcean has made for their, as evidence of their virtual machines.
Mm-hmm.
It's much of the same thing as when you're running it in maybe a program like VirtualBox on your computer. This time it's just in some machine on some server somewhere that's part of their services. So yeah, like I said earlier, we're going to do Ubuntu, and I like DigitalOcean because it's a very nice interface, and you can have your pick of these. They also have some other kind of distributions. They have this marketplace even, I think, where you can browse a little more options. And you can even do a custom image. So if you want to use something that's not listed here, you can take the ISO and actually upload it through this menu and actually just get going that way. So that's, I think, is really nice. And you can do that on most services, will allow you to do a custom ISO. So we're going to pick Ubuntu today. And they here on DigitalOcean, they have a couple different price ranges. Of course, as you see, like when you start getting into the more premium dedicated instances, they start charging significantly more. For our interests, we only need the basic version, which is a shared CPU. And what that means is that everyone who uses this plan is, oh yeah, Evan.
What is the pricing thing, or what is the pricing on DigitalOcean? So there's per hour and then there's per month. Per month is the maximum amount you can be charged, right?
So I think from what I've gathered, DigitalOcean is, I think it does charge by use. However, I think it might actually charge you, for example, if you pick this plan, it charges you $5 every month just for having that in existence. So it's a flat rate, whereas other services like Amazon will only charge you for uptime and actually using their instance. I think DigitalOcean actually just charges you monthly a flat rate.
I was going to say it looks like you're only being charged by the hour because your usage at the top right says $3.50.
That was for I had some other what do you call it? I had some of those maker bots that I was testing just sitting on here for a while before we started ours.
So the way I thought it worked was you get charged by the hour, up to
Up to
$5 a
$5.
month. Yeah, at least that's
That's a pretty
it-
standard model. Yeah, I don't know if DigitalOcean does it that way. I just treat it like I'm going to be spending $5 an hour regardless.
Mhm.
So like if I can't afford more than $5, $10, $15 a month for using this thing, I'm not going to pick that.
Okay.
Annoyingly, I haven't been able to find a good description, but I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure it's per hour up to the monthly cost.
I
up to it.
can verify that.
Yeah.
It is that 7,000ths of dollar every hour.
Oh,
And
cool that you use
most
it.
you'll be charged is that $5 for that entire month. So if it was running 24 hours for 30 days, you would be charged $5.
Oh, excellent. So you can actually use some of these more
Mhm.
intensive ones. Oh, that's cool.
So some of these that are like $50 a month or something, or $40 a month, that's 6 cents per hour. Well, if you only run a Minecraft server like 20 or 30 hours a week, I mean,
Yeah.
what's 30 times 6 cents?
I mean,
That's not all that much.
So what is it that you're doing in the next step?
So we're gonna select a. So we're gonna select a.
yeah, a data center region, which is only relevant for ping and latency. So for our interests, San Francisco is pretty close. You could even do something like Toronto. That's fine. We'll do Toronto because Canada is pretty fun. So here's an option. We recommend using an SSH key. And what that means is you create a key on your computer using a command in the terminal. You upload that to your droplet here. And when you actually try to log in, it'll just see that you have that key on your computer and give you access. For now, in time purposes and simplicity, I'm just going to keep it to a password because that's something we can touch upon the end if you want to learn how to set up it by SSH and log in that way. So password, we're just going to do makerspace. And it does not like that because that is a terrible password. But it's simple. And then we can choose a name. So let's call it MakerBot. And then you can deploy multiple. All right, what am I missing? Is it not like my password? It's not enough. Okay. Cannot end in a number or special character. All right.
It's a strange requirement.
Yeah, password generation. I would recommend
Yeah.
password generator.
Yeah, we're defeated by the password generation. Let's contain uppercase. Yeah.
Password
Oh,
generator.
first and
.net
last.
is nice.
That's what it was.
There you go. So I will say that DigitalOcean is easier to understand in terms of actually starting an instance and knowing what you get. Amazon is very obfuscated. Like EC2, they have so many names for so many of their things that it's harder to understand, and their interface is a little bit more complex.
AWS is sort of the power user option, so you get way more tools and a lot of different ways to interface with other elements of the AWS like cloud system. But DigitalOcean is much more simple and straightforward. Create droplet, connect to droplet, do a thing.
Yeah.
So that's great. You guys have your preferences, but can we go through the tutorial?
Yes. So here we have the bot, the maker bot loaded up. You can either use the console that they provide you here. It's just a nice little web tool. You can also use your actual terminal. So we'll just use the web terminal here for simplicity. Okay, so you start by logging, at least on Ubuntu with DigitalOcean, you start on with logging as root. Password. So that's what we decided to use.
Password was the password we created before.
Yes, the one that you created. All right, cool. So, and here we have it. It's just an Ubuntu server that they set up for us. It's much like when you set up on a Raspberry Pi. So we're going to start by doing some maintenance here. So we're going to sudo apt update, which is just going to fetch all the changes that have happened to our packages and our software on it. And then we're going to go upgrade to actually apply those. And we're going to put this little yes tag here so that we don't actually have to confirm it ourselves. And when that's all done, we are going to reboot. So that's all automated. Yeah, those little, what are they called? I think it's ampersand. The double ampersand is how you chain up commands on an Ubuntu server. So that's kind of nice. Rather than having to type them all out in sequence, if you know the commands that you want to use, you can just type it out, ampersand, ampersand, type out the commands, and it'll go ahead and do it.
So
yeah.
Liam, those commands, will that work with any system or will it only work with Ubuntu?
So that's specifically an Ubuntu command. So what I would take notes is whenever you start up a server, what you should do is to make sure to check for updates and then apply updates at the very beginning.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I would say you don't generally need to do that. Sometimes it's necessary, and if you're just running a game server, it's not too much. I don't know. I don't know. There's two schools of thought. There's keep everything updated, or like don't touch anything and let it continue to run.
So it's just going through all of that. It's gonna kick us off here in a second because it'll do a reboot, and that's fine. You can just open it up again. If you're using an SSH terminal, sometimes you just have to give it a minute to actually turn back on and start up that SSH program that runs on the server, so it can actually recognize your key. We had some issues with that where we were like, it's not letting us log in, but wasn't anything wrong. It just we needed to be more patient because it's a lower cost server. It might have already.
It's just pretty standard then.
Yeah.
Are there any forums or other resources that we could utilize if we were doing this on our own?
Yeah. So
YouTube is great.
I'm sorry, what was that?
YouTube is great.
Yeah. So if you're using like a Linux thing, a server, they'll have their site, and then they'll often have a link to a community where you can find the join the community teams or their Stack Exchange or other forums. So here we have just the general chats with things to look for questions. We also have the actual forums for Ubuntu specifically, but most things will have a forum of some kind. So if you just type into Google, help with insert whatever you're trying to set up here, you'll find a forum as far as Linux is concerned.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, I think. Yeah, there we go. Cool. All right, awesome. So yeah, now that we have that going, the first step is to make sure. What was it?
Well, now we can.
Trying to say.
We need to install Java.
Yes, we do. That's where it is. Okay. I was looking a little ahead. Yeah, so on Ubuntu, the way that you would install Java from the terminal is you do much like we did with the update.
Well, does it Does it ship with Java already? So
does
like
not.
Java dash dash version?
It does not.
Oh, okay.
Or at least it doesn't.
Not with this DigitalOcean version. And
Oh, there we go. Okay.
yeah, so if you need something, you can usually test it out by trying to use it. Java can be tested by just typing Java. Like on Ubuntu, they give you a nice little command list here. So the reason why we do sudo apt is because that gives root level permissions when you're doing it. Not all installations need root. You don't need to use sudo for everything. But if you're installing Java, in this case, you will. So you'll need to do sudo apt install. And the version we want is the OpenJDK
11.
11 headless.
So 11 is in long-term support, so it's a perfect option for as a choice for a server, something that you don't want to be making a lot of changes on.
Oh, I forgot the JRE.
You forgot.
Some packages are nicer named than others. Some are very long. There we go. Let's hit yes. What it did there at the beginning was just kind of list out everything it's going to install along with that package you picked is all. And that's just going to go through.
Most operating systems, and in particular Linux, have really good package manager support. So apt, that apt is a package manager. So if you want to install something, you can just type apt, the thing you want to install, or apt install, and then the name of the package you want to install, and it automatically gets that package and all of the other packages that package relies on. So all the dependencies, and it takes care of all that for you.
Same concept as like an app store on your phone.
Yeah, except just run from the terminal rather than with a user interface and mouse clicks. All right, so the first thing we want to do after getting Java is just to make sure that we have our port open. So this is specific to Minecraft as far as the port number goes. So 25565. You will have to look at whatever you're trying to do. So depending on if it's a different game or a different service, like a node or an express server that you're setting up, they'll give you information in the documentation respective to that framework or technology on which ports you need to use. In this case, we know it's this one for the Minecraft server, so we go ahead and do that. All right, now the firewall on our server will actually allow communication through that port. And then, oh yes, so I'm going to type LL or LS. I'm going to use LL. And basically, this is a way that you can view your environment. LS looks like this. And this is just kind of the nearby folders or files that are at your directory level. It's kind of like when you're searching through Explorer and you can see everything. In this case, it's through a terminal. So what we're going to want to start by doing after that is we're going to make a directory. And in this case, we're going to call it server. The name doesn't necessarily matter unless your documentation says to name it something specific. In our case, it's just easier to make it server. So if we go ls again, you can now see that we have a server folder, is what that means. Usually the terminals will color files and folders differently so that you can tell the difference just by color. All right, and so we're going to go change directory into server. Boom, and now we're here. There's nothing in here. Let's see. Oh yes, we need to start that screen session. Gage, would you mind explaining the screen session and why we're starting it?
So for when you're starting, when you're working from a remote instance, when you're logged into this terminal, it's running, like the server's running and everything inside of it is running. But when you close the terminal that he has open right now, it will stop running all the processes inside. And so basically, Ubuntu server has a command called screen, which lets you make a detached instance, which is basically just a way to have a program run off to the side without having to worry about you closing down your shell that's open. So the server can continue to run even when you log out of, well, where Liam is right now.
Yeah. So if I as it stands right now, if I click X, it kind of shuts itself off. It's like nobody's accessing me. I'm going to save data in space. I'm going to turn off. But the screen will, like you said, allow that server to run, so you don't have to have the terminal open every time you want to play a game. All right. So what was the command to start it, Gage? Was it just screen start or something like that?
You don't need to do it quite yet.
Oh, we don't need to do it yet? Okay.
Yeah. Instead, you should get the files for the server.
That's
the
right.
Minecraft server.
Just my stop sharing my screen for just a moment. So when I get to go into Discord, I believe.
Gage, when we're getting the files, are we getting the files from our existing game, or what are we doing with getting the files?
So, for Minecraft, anyways, what you do is you go to their website, and actually, I'll also link it inside of the Zoom chat. But basically, you go to their website and you find on their website they have a page for the server, like the server application that needs to be ran to actually run the server. And when you go there, it says, Liam, could you show it? Can you open up the server link I put in your web browser?
Yeah. You put it in the Zoom chat.
Yeah. And so when you go there, at least in the case for Minecraft, it has a direct link to actually downloading the .jar file, which is the server. And
where's the chat? Oh, give me a second. It's my first.
You do not need to download it from your game or through any indirect means for Minecraft.
I see. So it's the equivalent of like getting a library or something along that lines. Okay.
Yeah.
Or it could just be, like when you're on Facebook and you want, or Pinterest and you want to download a photo and you press the download button or whatever, you're just doing that. And so that's what this command does.
Fair enough, but it's for multiple assets at the same time, right?
In this case, it's just for one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You can chain it up to get multiple things if you need to. Usually the commands will let you know, or like they'll provide you ones that are like, hey, just run this to get it. In this case, it's just a web get of the server.jar package that we want. So
okay.
And wget just stands for we want to download this, whatever's at this link from, and just download it to our computer, to the current directory we're in.
Webget.
Yeah.
Just like click and download if you're already on the site, but from a terminal. A lot of this stuff is very similar to how you would use it through a user interface on a browser, but just via commands. All right, so we have our server jar file. And
so here's where you would want to use the screen command, which creates, basically a separate shell for the server. So to do that, you just type screen. And that's just telling you some information on it. It's telling you it's free software. Okay. So
have our
Do
you want to go ahead and actually explain this command too, Gage?
Sure. So the way that Java works is that it's its own little container within your computer, within your operating system. And when you're doing that, at least for a Minecraft server, you have to tell it how much RAM you want to give it. And so XMS is basically the starting amount that it's guaranteed to have. And then the XMX is if it needs more RAM, it will take up that much more RAM. In this case, our droplet only has a gigabyte of RAM. And so we're allocating most of that to the Java server because we need to leave at least some RAM for the operating system to run. And then the rest we're just giving to the server to do what it wants with it. If that makes sense.
I think that was a good explanation. If no one has any other questions on that. Yeah, so like you said, that's right over here is where you kind of detail how much memory, and then these are all flags and options specific to unpacking the jar file, and that's provided in Java's documentation or the Minecraft documentation as well, most likely.
The equivalent of a jar file is just an executable file that almost everyone is used to doing for like launching, the Google Chrome or whatever.
Yes. So when you first run this is part of it. It's going to fail because in this case, there is a EULA file that you need to agree to, and that is easy enough to do, even though we don't have a text editor, a typical text editor, that is. So we start by typing nano, and then it's actually, let's go ahead and see what's around us. Whoa. So yeah, when we ran that last command, it actually unpacked some things, gave us two new things. One is that EULA text file, so we can open that by using nano. And you just type it by nano and then the file. And it opens this kind of window that's almost like a text editor, like Notepad or anything else. It is a little weirder in that some of these keys, since there's no user interface, like graphical user interface, almost all of it is key commands and instructions. So just pay attention to down here, not to hit the one that you want. So in this case, let's just start by going to set that to true because we agree to it. And then I'm going to press this little up caret, I believe is control. Is that control or shift, Gage?
That's control.
That's control, okay. Yeah, so that's control O. That's actually going to write it. And then it's like, wants us to name the file we want to try to, the same file. Cool. And it gives us a little status that we wrote those 3 lines.
Control O. Oh, okay.
Yeah, control O in nano, I think, refers to control out, as in writing out versus reading the file.
Yeah, yeah. You can also you can either do control O or you could do control X, and then exit will give you a prompt of like, do you want to save this or not?
Yeah. And so we hit X, and that exits nano. It'll still, you can like clear the screen if you want. That's totally fine. All right, so when we run, now that we've agreed to the file, we can actually run that command again that we ran before, and it'll actually go through. And since we've agreed to the terms, it'll actually do what it's supposed to be doing. And then I'm pretty sure that's the steps up until actually joining the server, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a pretty simple process. The hardest part is going to be figuring out the steps you need to perform for a particular service. So in this case, Minecraft is pretty straightforward, and it's been made pretty streamlined for people because you have people of all ages playing it in tech levels. So they made it nice and easy for everyone. Some things are a little more obtuse and harder to get started, but it's all along the same premises of throwing up a new virtual machine and then setting up the server through some commands.
I'd say probably screen, and just knowing the commands to use is probably the hardest part.
Yeah. Yeah. Even I didn't know about screen before preparing for this workshop. So that was something. There's just things you kind of pick up as you dive into it.
Yeah. Some things that were specifically relevant or related to the Minecraft server and not necessarily every server was running the server and then agreeing to the EULA or the EULA. That's sort of a Minecraft server thing. Not all game servers use Java. That was also a Minecraft server thing. Did you guys have to do? Well, I assume there's an option too, but I don't think we had to do any like settings file configuration to get this to work.
No, not at the
Minecraft auto
start.
generates.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes you do have to dive in there with something like Vim or Nano to actually get it to start.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, yeah, we just run that command at first.
All right.
Okay.
So do you want to? Well, I guess
Yeah, I
you
can.
can demonstrate it working.
Yeah. So we have DigitalOcean is nice because even in the console they provide you your IP address for the server itself. So let me get Minecraft launcher going. I'll share my screen. Okay. All right, can everyone see my whole screen now?
I can.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so oh, it's the play button hidden behind. Yeah.
You
Right.
have it set for Forge right now. Will it still work?
Oh, that's a good point. I don't think it will. So yeah, Forge is just a mod that I have, and you can totally add mods and custom files and whatnot to your game and your server. It's totally within your control. You just have to make sure you have it all lined up and ready.
And there are a lot of guides for installing all sorts of mods and plugins for a Minecraft server.
Yeah. And you'll do
Those
it
are-
in a very similar way to the way you got the server.jar in the first place. All right, so
Those generally require a lot more tweaking and like file editing and stuff to get to run.
So yeah, so to actually join the server, it's as simple as finding the public IP address, not the private one. Public meaning that everyone on the internet is able to actually access it. And normally this will fill, I think, with some default server address. You can clear that out. And then I can control V in the public IP address.
Are you currently showing that? Because I see
Oh,
a big screen right now.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Let me see if I can stream specifically Minecraft. Are you able to see more than the loading screen?
No, I see
I'm
red
not
loading
able.
screen, Mojang Studios.
Is there any change now?
No.
No.
Really? Okay.
I assume you've loaded up the game.
Yeah, the game is loaded. Okay. Let me try this again. Load the whole screen. Is it capturing the red loading screen?
I
Still just
You want to try sharing after it's already past the loading screen, maybe?
try
yeah.
going to the settings and turning full screen off.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Oh, is your full screen on?
Yeah, that'll fix it.
It might not be playing nicely.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, Zoom is weird in the way that it captures the screen, huh? Okay,
Yeah.
So I hit multiplayer. We go direct connect. So then let me do this. So yeah, you can clear out whatever is here at first, and then I just put in the public IP address, and then we put a colon, not a semicolon, and then we put that port that we set up. So that's basically saying go to this IP address and then go through this port to actually get to the server. And after it's kicked up, which it is, you can just join the world. And here I am playing on my little Minecraft server. So if we actually alt tab, you can see that it actually loads a bunch of info about if someone joins, if someone leaves, and you can actually write your own programs and software to do different things. If, for example, let's say I join, and you want to do some sort of special announcement on somebody's screen, you can actually do that. You can actually go in and look up, like Gage and Evan said, some mods and some guys, and maybe even reach out to some of the people who made those and be like, hey, I want to do this thing, and display a message every time someone greets. And you'll probably see something on the forums sticky for some of the more common things. And it's pretty straightforward. It's terminal heavy, but you can start doing pretty crazy stuff. I mean, it's just Minecraft right now. But if you want everyone to have a certain mod or be able to use a certain texture pack by default, you can do that. But yeah. What was that, Gage?
So first I want to say that Zoom streaming just looks horrible for
I bet
the
it
game.
does. I bet this is anything but 4K.
It's a slideshow. Yeah.
It's a slideshow.
Is it running like a slideshow for you?
Oh no, not at all. And it's definitely not my internet because I have like 300 down, and I also have like at least 12 up. So it's not the worst. It's also Minecraft. It's not like it's ray tracing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so Zoom aside, it's working rather fine. And this is the cheapest version on DigitalOcean. And we tested it out with a couple people. And I think you said about 5 people, Gage, is probably the limit for the lowest instance that you would recommend.
Yeah,
as
probably
you can see,
4 or 5.
just timed out on me. Let's see what happened.
I would say the lowest instance, so what we have currently set up is not quite cut out to run a Minecraft server.
Yeah.
You'd be better off switching to one of the, let's see, maybe the $15 a month droplet, but remember that it's only, so this one is only 2.2 cents per hour. So if you only run it for
What's the drawback? Is it speed or its size, or both?
So the drawback on the lowest one is it doesn't have much memory, and the speed of the processor that you're sharing is also lower. And if you pay more, you basically get more priority to more RAM.
Gotcha.
And you can actually, when you're like using something, they'll usually tell you like recommended specifications for the server. If you look beyond just the welcome page, like if you go to the Minecraft server info, they'll be like, oh, we recommend, these specs, and you can use that as a guide.
But if it's just you and 2 or 3 other people, then this works relatively fine. I mean, us 3 were trying out an instance a bit ago, and it
chugged, but it worked well enough. Yeah, if you were just desperate for a quick Minecraft server.
So do you want to show the final commands, the screen commands to wrapping it all up? That way you can leave DigitalOcean and still have it running and be fine.
Yes. So, all right, Control Z until we stop the server. So do we want to run the Minecraft server and then do the screen, or do you want to do screen first?
So you're already in the screen instance from your command earlier. So now you can just run the server. You didn't have to stop it.
Okay.
And so when you start running the server, now you can do the command Control AD. You just press all three of those together, and that takes you out of the screen instance. So you've now reclaimed your actual terminal. You're outside of the server, and so now you can do other things within the droplet instance without being stuck.
Yeah, stuck at that explicit.
If you want to go back to the server, you type screen space -list. This will list all your different applications that you have running in their own little environment. And you can see at the very start, it has a 4-digit number. It's 2790. That's the ID of it. And if you want to go back into that session, you type screen space -r space the ID you see right there, which is 2790.
Hey, Gage. So initially when we had stepped out of it, is that the point that we're no longer being charged, or are we still being charged for the droplet?
You're still being charged.
Okay.
As long as the virtual machine is running, you're being charged.
Yeah.
This is so accessing the virtual machine through essentially a different terminal window. Back in the day when prior to Linux, there was Unix, and then Linux is kind of the successor to Unix in a way. Unix was designed around like one big computer being in a university's basement, and then hundreds of people accessing it all at the same time with different terminals. So the terminal window that you've opened is kind of like that, or kind of like its own user. So whenever you close that terminal window, anything that you have running in that like terminal window instance is immediately killed, because it assumes that like, well, this person's like done, this person's logged off. And if you want something to continue running, regardless of terminal window instance, there's a few ways to do that, and screen is one of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're signing the server to watch itself, basically, like saying, yeah, you can handle that.
Yeah, screen says like, hey, like I'm gonna step out of this terminal, but you're going to continue running this terminal, and just like, I'm not going to touch it. But like in the background, that terminal instance is still technically running, and everything in that terminal instance is still running.
Great for things. So if you have a group of people who are still wanting to play the game, they can still play it even though you're not.
Yeah, even though you don't have your terminal open.
Got it.
Your computer can be off, you can be asleep, and your friends can still join up in the Minecraft server because it's still running, regardless of anyone's attention. So yeah, I mean that was the game
really quick.
Yeah, we can definitely go through some more things, like going through AWS if.
Oh, yeah, I could do AWS.
Yeah, if you want to.
That would be pretty cool too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll stop sharing. And then I'm actually going to step away just for a few minutes, if that's all right. Some family just got home.
Okay.
I think they were messaging me, so I will be right back.
Okay, do you see that?
Yes.
Is that already built into your query?
Was someone speaking?
Oh, I'm sorry. My husband's in a business call as well.
Oh, okay.
So this is AWS, Amazon Web Services. It's a lot more involved than it's a lot more. There's a lot more services, as you can see. These are all different services that Amazon has under its cloud services umbrella. And what we're going to use for hosting on AWS is EC2. EC2 is elastic compute. So the idea behind it is if you need more instances of a virtual machine, you can have it set up so that the elastic, like the whole idea is the elasticity of it. So if you're hosting a website or if you're hosting a service and you get an unexpectedly high number of users, instead of your website crashing or whatever, you can have it autonomously start up another 10, 20,000 whatever instances to host your website on, so that people don't experience a slow website. So that's why they call it EC2. But so we're going to use it for game server. So there's up in that corner there's launch instances. Depending on the game server, there's different distributions of operating systems available. You're probably going to want to use Ubuntu server, one of the LTS versions. LTS is long-term support, so there won't be any major potentially program-breaking updates for. I think the standard is like 3 years. Never heard of SUSE. Red Hats is a thing.
OpenSUSE is it's a distro from Germany, actually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I think they're like an enterprise developer targeted thing. There's lots of different distros, yeah.
Some game servers, like if you want to host, depending on the game, most games are probably going to have a Linux-based server because that's the most efficient and lightweight and reliable. Some games are going to have like a Windows-based server, so you'll need a Windows server to host that. And Amazon also has its own distribution of Linux called Amazon Linux. I've never used it, but I've heard it can be potentially more efficient on Amazon's hardware. It's more finely tuned to what Amazon has in-house. But
it's also kind of customized by Amazon, so it'll deviate a bit from other Linux distributions. So if you have some prior knowledge or some experience with Linux, you might find yourself having to kind of relearn some things, special commands.
You can also run on different architectures. So typically, the vast majority of computers that you're going to run a game on are x86 from like an Intel x86 processor line. That's where it gets the name from. Raspberry Pis have an ARM architecture. Not a lot of game servers actually compile and run on ARM, so keep that in mind if you want to run a game server on a Raspberry Pi. Like I tried to run Factorio on a Raspberry Pi, and it's just not meant for it. It's a completely different instruction set, and don't worry about it. So Amazon has a very different naming scheme for its instances. So CPU memory, they have how optimized for certain types of storage it is. They have different network performance. They have different processor speeds and stuff. And a lot of the name families can be pretty confusing, like C5, C5A, C5AD, G4DN. I don't know what most of these are, but for the most part, the T series is what you're probably going to want to use. So we're going to go free tier eligible just to show it off here, so that I won't be charged, and neither will you for the first, I think 12 months. Yeah, first 12 months following your AWS sign-up date, you get 750 hours of micro instances each month. So you basically get free T2 micros for a year. And the T2 micro doesn't have a whole lot. It only has one virtual CPU and 1 gig of RAM. Same as the DigitalOcean droplet we just used. And its network performance is not great, but I assume this applies to DigitalOcean as well, but once you have once you have once you have everything set up, so like operating system, server installed and like ready to run and stuff, simply changing from a T2 micro to say T2 large or T2 extra large is very, very easy. It won't affect the operating system or the installation or anything like that. It's super easy. You just change it from you just change the type of instance, and everything goes fine and nothing breaks. I assume DigitalOcean has a similar feature, but I don't know. We don't need to go through any more of the. Oh, actually, yeah. So some of these are more advanced options. So most of these we can leave alone. Amazon works on the principle of VPCs, so virtual private cloud. I don't know all that much about that, but for the most part, whatever your default, most of these can be left default. Storage, 8 gigabytes is fine. You can increase this if you want. We're not going to worry about tags. Security groups. I'm not going to talk about security groups today. We just leave it on create new security group and you'll be fine. And then these are there's different security rules. So in order to be able to SSH into the server, which was what we did before with that terminal window in DigitalOcean, that was effectively that was an SSH session. It went through the website, but it overall it was basically an SSH session. I think it stands for secure shell. It's an easy way to over the internet log into a machine. However, for certain servers, you might need to set a certain rule, like let's see. Some game servers most game servers are going to use UDP. So there's two sorts of communication protocols for like internet communication. There's TCP and there's UDP. TCP is like, hey, did you get my message? Yes, I did. Okay, good. Or like, hey, did you get my message? No, I did not. Okay, I'll send it again. UDP is like, I'm just going to throw my message at you and hope you received it. And then usually programs that use UDP to communicate have their own methods of checking, like whether that message was received or not. Does anything need to be updated, et cetera, et cetera. Most game servers, at least in my experience, tend to use UDP.
They recommend you open both though for TCP also.
Okay. So we can either select custom TCP and select like a specific port or port range. Like in Minecraft, if we knew that it was only ever going to use the typical Minecraft port of 25565, that's fairly arbitrary, by the way. Minecraft server, the Minecraft server decided that this is going to be its typical default port. So most Minecraft servers that you connect to are probably going to use that port. Different servers might have a different favorite port, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. You can set it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if you really want to, but best to just leave it as the default. I'm just going to leave this at all in case there's other issues that I don't know about and I don't want to.
Yeah, you need to check change source, don't you?
Where? Oh, I see.
And for SSH, don't you also have to change the source to your IP so you can connect?
Yes, but so
Oh, you're just gonna leave it as 0. Never mind. That works.
yeah, so yeah, if you just leave it as 0.0.0.0/0, that just allows all IP addresses. So you can specify only your own IP address is able to SSH into the server, but most residential IP addresses are going to change on a sometimes daily, sometimes weekly, sometimes it's hard to tell basis. That's a dynamic IP address, and you can't really. You can change that, but that recalls calling your, or that requires calling your internet service provider to get that changed, and it's really not worth it. So that's fine. So this is all set up. So the way Amazon works is it doesn't give you an option to either log into it remotely with a password or through an SSH key. It has to be an SSH key, or it has to be one of these key pairs. Or it has to be through SSH, and it will automatically generate a key pair. So let's create a new key pair. Let's call it key. I'm just going to download that. And then we're going to hit launch instances. And now our instance is pending, so it's going to spin up, and it's going to get in a minute or two, we'll see it. And while that is doing its thing, let's open PowerShell. See if I can make this. Does that look fine? Yeah.
Yes, that does look fine.
Okay. What was this again? Yeah. So to SSH into it, that's just -I. Okay. So it's SSH -I. So the SSH command, and then -I, the -I flag for saying that you're going to be using a file that contains the key in it, which is going to be in there. And then in order to access it, so now that it's running, we can click on this or click on instance ID, and we're going to want to find, so under networking, the public DNS, and we can just copy that. And then it's going to be, so we're going to log into not root like we did in DigitalOcean, but we're going to log into, the default user is Ubuntu at, and then that DNS. So EC2, and then that external IP, and then .compute.amazon.aws.com. Actually, hold on a second. What? Oh, we're in North Virginia. Oh, that's a shame. Okay. One thing I forgot to do was I forgot to change my availability zone to Oregon. So currently it's in So currently this instance is running in a data center in Northern Virginia. But it should work just fine anyways. So it's going to ask you like, type yes or no. And now we're in. So we're now on an instance of Ubuntu running on AWS, and then from here on it'll be exactly the same as the DigitalOcean instance. So it was so yeah, it's going to be just sudo apt install the default. Actually, what did you guys use? The OpenJDK 11?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, so from here everything's the same. Yeah,
Yeah.
Evan.
Yep.
So you open those ports from the website of things on the AWS website.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still have to open up the ports within this terminal now?
I don't think so. 404 not found. What? I don't think so. I was able to connect to a Factorio server. I started up not too long ago by just through that. How do I get to it? It might be the security group. Yeah, it's the security group. So you go to the security group, you edit inbound connection rules, all TCP, all UDP. Yeah, I was able to set up a Factorio server using just custom UDP on not a specific address, but a very specific port, and that was totally fine. The way these work are these are just inbound connection rules, so nobody will be able to contact your server except through these channels on these ports from these IPs, if you specify them. But then once an inbound connection is established, sometimes servers will use, say, one specific port to and establish a connection, and then use a completely different port for communication. In the case of TCP, and then it doesn't really matter whether or not it's incoming or outgoing, because then at that point it's technically outgoing because they initiated the connection. But that's neither here nor there.
Technically, setting up then the networking aspect could be easier for people through AWS if they understand all the different settings and how to actually navigate, because I think it's rather confusing to navigate an AWS instance.
It is. The documentation's really nice, but it's definitely the more advanced option. Why did this not?
Maybe you need to update all those packages you were trying to say you didn't have to do earlier, Evan.
But I don't like to update packages. I'm always scared when I update packages if I'm going to break anything.
Yeah, so that there are, like Evan said, there are multiple schools of thought. There are people who update their servers, and there are Luddites who don't believe in such things. That Linux should have stayed at version 1.0, and that
Evan, you're-
vulnerabilities are a necessary risk to living a
So
license.
keep it updated, but oh wait a minute.
You
Do I
have to update. apt-get update, sir.
Sudo apt update. Oh yes.
Oh, wait a minute. Did you guys update the package, like the cached package list, or did you guys run through and upgrade every package in the?
So you update the list of packages,
Mm-hmm.
and then you run upgrade for everything that needs to be upgraded.
Oh, okay. No, updating you 100% have to do.
And you have to do upgrade as well.
No, you don't have to do upgrade.
Okay, then don't do upgrade.
You don't.
Let's
You
see.
don't
Let's
always.
see. Settle this in the terminal right now.
Yeah. So I mean, I would expect everything to be upgraded already because it's a new instance, or at least like upgraded to, like Ubuntu 20.0, 0.04 or 0.0.4 or whatever.
I just want to point out you're the same person, Evan, that would leave the government computers on Windows XP, and then when like WannaCry virus and these things hit them, you're like, it's fine, you know. It might be a 20-year-old operating system that barely gets updates, but who cares about security, right?
Hey, we still target nuclear missiles using 18-inch floppy disks, and that is a-okay.
Can't hack a floppy
a-okay.
disk from across the world.
I need to take a couple
those
yogurt covered Skittles to get through this.
But
I can't. What else did you guys do to? It's the wget the Java server. But yeah, don't think I'm gonna go through all that.
You've covered the instance.
It's exactly the same thing again, and it's just hosted on a different platform now. Yeah.
And so with AWS in specific, students, if it's their first time signing up with AWS, they can get a free year of the free tier instances, which happens to be the current instance that Evan's running of 1 gigabyte of RAM and a single CPU core.
Yeah, it's not great, but it's or at least this instance is not great, but it's more than sufficient to like get something running and see if it runs and make sure everything runs fine before you start changing instances. So
it'd be perfect for like a website, web server, database. I mean, it works pretty well for most things. It's just a game server happens to be quite demanding.
So let's go over probably the most important part of this workshop, and that is shutting everything down so you don't get billed later. So when you're done, at least in AWS, you can either right click on it and hit stop instance. So in AWS, stopping it will shut it down, but save the save your progress on it. So if I hit stop and then it shut down, I could then hit start and turn it back on again, and everything would be just as I left it, or reboot. However, if you hit terminate, which I'm gonna do because it's the end of the workshop and I don't need this instance anymore, terminate will shut it down and delete it for good.
You want to show it for DigitalOcean, Liam, if you have it up.
So DigitalOcean, from what I understand, you just either delete or let me.
Evan.
Yeah.
I'm gonna share my screen. Let me close.
Don't they have a huge slider for DigitalOcean, if I remember right? So it's the on-off switch there.
Yeah. It's kind of hidden by the fact that the button is white and the background is white. But yeah, you can turn it off. And you can even go inside from your terminal and just say shut down. I'm pretty sure that will do it, unless I'm not correct. Will shutting down the actual virtual machine actually stop you from being charged?
In Amazon, yes. So the moment you hit shut down, even if Amazon's service derps out for an hour and for some reason the instance takes an hour to shut down, you will not be billed for the time it takes to shut down, only the time that it is like running and fully running.
So real quick, here's an answer to the question we had earlier. In DigitalOcean, you will be billed for every hour that a droplet exists, on or off.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And
weird.
You're taking up their share of data and hardware space.
Yeah. So
in terms of drive space,
you can pretty much consider that those monthly plans, if you use them for the whole month, will be that flat rate, which to some is undesirable.
To avoid this, you can you can save an image of it, so you can save the you can take a snapshot of it, which basically it gives you the entire it'll be like the entire it'll be the entire droplet, and you shouldn't be charged as much, because when you take a snapshot, you're basically going to
like if you plan to not play on your Minecraft server for a while, but you want to keep it, you can just snapshot it, put that in storage, and start it up again.
See, the charge is a lot less for it. So instead of charging you every hour at 7/1000th of a dollar or whatever, instead it's charging you for 5 cents per gigabyte per month, which that MakerBot server he probably has running right now with that Minecraft server is probably less than 2 gigs. And so it'd be less than 10 cents easily a month. And then if you ever want to have the droplet again, you can just take that snapshot and turn it into a droplet.
Yeah.
Although
I think Amazon's is probably more elegant in this remark.
It is. That is true.
Amazon has volumes.
Yeah, Amazon is a much larger company, so therefore can chew through a lot more inconvenience than DigitalOcean can.
Right, but I can also see where you guys are saying that this is more user-friendly for students who are unfamiliar. Like, this is, open.
For sure.
It's more like an app as opposed to a giant, overwhelming website.
Yeah, like a tool,
exactly.
AWS scared me off like a year or two ago when I was starting to get to know things. I was like, I don't know.
I'm only familiar with it because I took a class. Yeah.
Somebody got it. You have to have a guide.
So now that you've done this, you're shut down. You don't have to worry about you've powered your droplet down. You don't have to worry about being billed outside of this, right?
Yeah, if you take the snapshot, or like if on AWS, you turn it off, kind of thing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, every provider is going to have their different options, and that's not like a technology-based thing. That's just a business thing. So you have to look into whoever you decide to use. And there are more things than just DigitalOcean and AWS. In all honesty, like I have an old laptop here. You could quite honestly plug your laptop in, install Ubuntu server on it, and do all of these same steps after you get that installed that you did here, and then just have that computer sitting in a corner of your house plugged in or on Wi-Fi, and it'll be a server. End quote. So
I have a Raspberry Pi dangling by an Ethernet cable in my closet right now.
That sounds so. What is with my camera and being saturated white? It looks like the ghost. But yeah.
Yeah, and there's far more There's far more services than just DigitalOcean and Amazon. There's Google Cloud Platform. There's Microsoft Azure or Azure or however you're supposed to pronounce that.
Sure.
I think there's IBM Cloud. I think Oracle has a cloud platform too, but I think that one's more enterprise. So I don't.
Everyone and their mother has a cloud platform these
We
days.
can see your signal, by the way, Liam. You're
Oh,
sharing.
you can.
Screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Stop the screen share.
But for almost every cloud provider, it's the same steps. They're all generally the same. It's just some offer different levels of integration with each other, which may or may not matter to you.
Yeah.
There'll be different billing options and billing models. There'll be different, platforms that they're built into. So a friend of mine built a sort of a frame, almost like a framework around a game server that he put up. So instead of just starting an instance manually and installing Java on it and then manually, or installing Minecraft on it and then manually shutting it down, he installed Minecraft on it and stuff, and then had it so that when you went to a website or when you pinged a certain website, it would start up the server. The server would be up within 10 to 15 minutes, or maybe it was like 5 to 10 minutes. I don't know. It would, if it didn't have, so it would access a Amazon database and retrieve the world file, load the world file, and then people would play on the world. And then as the server was running, there would be I think a cron job or something also running in the background on the server that would check every 15 minutes. Is there people on the server? And if it found that there is nobody on the server for more than 15 minutes, then it would save the world back to that separate Amazon database. I think it was an S3 bucket. And then it would shut down the instance, and then that would be it. And then the whole process would repeat itself. So it would save money and autonomously start without having to have access to AWS. That's a lot. That's a lot though. Yeah. It's a lot of cross platform stuff.
Yeah.
So I just want to say thanks, you guys. This has been really
No problem.
informative. And I
nice.
happen to think the three of you make a really great team. You should do another project like this again.
Yes. I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you.
The boys worked hard on this one. They're very helpful. So thank you. I also want to say thank you, Gage and Evan.
So where can we get the recording of this?
Should probably stop that.
I will stop that now.
Okay, cool.